The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is looked at as the game that completely changed the gaming industry, and at its time, it was the most pre-ordered game ever. And until just a few years ago, it was the best game ever, only beaten by Super Mario Galaxy. No, this isn't a joke, and it isn't my personal opinion. Out of every game that has ever existed, Ocarina of Time held the highest average review score with a 97.63%. Super Mario Galaxy passed it in 2012 with 97.64. So why exactly is Ocarina of Time looked at as such an amazing game? And does a game regarded so highly have any faults? Well, yeah, I mean, while Ocarina of Time is a masterpiece, it isn't perfect, despite the lowest review score that it got being a 9. However, that is the issue here. I never realized how hard this video would be to make. I tried to think of some of Ocarina of Time's shortcomings, but couldn't. I mean, I didn't want to just fault the game for something that it was never trying to do to begin with. I mean, you wouldn't fault Skyrim for bad platforming, or drop Super Mario 64's review score down a few points because of the lack of online functionality. In the same way, you wouldn't fault Ocarina of Time for something stupid like no multiplayer or lack of a jump button. So I turned to old reviews, and nothing. Typically, a review of a game getting 10 out of 10 everywhere has no negativity in it. So after brainstorming, I decided to turn to you all, the fans, and asked what you would change or just didn't like about Ocarina of Time. I gathered some of the most popular answers, and was finally able to complete my list. So with that out of the way, let's get started with the top 5 best and worst things about The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Alternating between the bad and the good, let's start at number 10 with the bad. So first up is Zelda Ura. If you weren't aware, the Nintendo 64 had an expansion called the 64 disk drive, which gave the Nintendo 64 more processing power and the ability to read discs. Nintendo planned on giving Ocarina of Time, among other games, an expansion pack, or what we would call DLC today, but without the downloading. But the 64 disk drive failed, and even though Miyamoto has said that the Ura project was completed, and we even seen beta footage for it, Nintendo never published it. Little is actually known about what it would have brought to Ocarina of Time, but Nintendo has said that most of it was used in later Zelda games like Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and possibly even Skyward Sword. What we do know is it would have brought extra dungeons, new areas, side quests, bosses, weapons, items, basically adding a second game. I remember one quote mentioning being able to walk on a beach, which isn't even in Ocarina of Time, and your footprints would remain in the sand. You could cut down a sign and it would remain that way. The game would remember and save the changes that you bring to the world. A few of the things that were reused in later titles was the mask abilities and a time system being brought to Majora's Mask, though it was originally 7 days and not 3. In Twilight Princess, we got sword fights on Epona, which wasn't possible due to the Nintendo 64's limited processing power. We've seen this mainly with King Bokoblin and during the main boss fight with Ganondorf. And finally, this artwork on Link's tree, went unquestioned for almost 15 years, up until Skyward Sword was released. And well, does this look familiar? So wrapping this up, it sucks we missed out on the complete Ocarina of Time experience. So this being removed from the game is one of the things that I hate the most about Ocarina of Time.
Number 9. Time travel.
Now, I'm sure the box art, commercials, strategy guides, and other things gave it away, but let's go back to 1998 when this game first launched. After sinking 10 or more hours into this game, learning everything about the Kokiri, the Hylians, being annoyed by Kaepora Gaebor at Navi, and just getting lost in the world and coming to know the characters. You are so focused on this game. You've become lost in this world. You know almost everything about it. You finally collect the 3 spiritual stones, and if A Link to the Past taught us anything, we're about to get the Master Sword. We notice the closer we get to the castle, the darker the world becomes. Suddenly we're experiencing the dream the game began with, and after all the excitement is over, we rush to the Temple of Time, pull the Master Sword, and everything changes. One of the biggest twists in video game history, and if you would have spoiled this for me, I probably would have killed you moments that I ever experienced happened. We are now adult Link, but that isn't all. The entire world has changed with us. Hyrule Castletown is completely destroyed. Everyone has moved to Kakariko Village. Kokiri Forest is full of monsters, Lake Hylia is dried up, Zoras Domain is frozen, Hyrule is one of the worst states that we will ever see. However, we aren't stuck here in this destroyed world. We can freely go back and forth through time at will. In doing so, we discover secrets and side quests. For example, the Song of Storms paradox is one of the best uses of time travel that I've ever seen. The perfect use of time travel in this game creates some of the best gameplay experiences ever. It opens up side quests, you get to see the entire world completely changed. You can change from an adult to a child. It connects you to this world like you would have never been before, and offers a completely new gameplay experience, like riding on Epona and using items you otherwise weren't able to.
Number 8. Zora's Domain.
Maybe this was a bit obvious, but I mean, seriously, you beat the forest temple, the monsters disappear. You beat the fire temple, the Gorons return to the city. You beat the spirit temple, you're able to freely walk around Gerudo Fortress. You beat the water temple, water returns to Lake Hylia. Defeating a boss of a dungeon has an immediate effect on the world. However, Zora's Domain never unfreezes. When I was a kid and beat Ocarina of Time, I spent hours a day just exploring and uncovering new puzzles, heart pieces, and other in-game activities to 100% the game. This included believing I could find a way to unfreeze and save the Zoras. Maybe it was something I missed in the water temple, so I restarted new save files thinking maybe I missed something. But you literally couldn't do anything to help them. I mean, you could unfreeze King Zora, and he was frozen with special red ice. So surely we could melt the normal ice, and if the ice cavern taught us anything, it was that we could destroy and unfreeze Zora's Domain. So what is a kid to do? Well, I found out years later that this was something left in the game that was meant to be featured in the Ura expansion. Apparently, the ice cavern was meant to be a full dungeon, and it would unfreeze Zora's Domain once completed. But when the game was scrapped, the full dungeon was changed to the mini dungeon and made part of the Water Temple's quest. This was also an ideal reused later in Twilight Princess.
Number 7. The Dungeons.
A Link to the Past introduced us to traditional themed dungeons we have come to love and expect in Zelda games, but bringing them to 3D took it to a brand new level. Each dungeon in Ocarina of Time truly felt different from one another. It kept the game from getting repetitive, the atmosphere would be completely different, the music would change, the enemies would be different, and the items you used would be as well. Nintendo did an amazing job making each dungeon unique. The Deku Tree was the perfect introduction for learning things you would later use and teaching you how the game worked. Each dungeon after upped the difficulty and changed the puzzles to make you think in different ways. The fire dungeons made great use of fire, the water dungeons used the water perfectly, the Shadow Temple legitimately scared me, and they all also felt part of the world. They were easy to believe they were connected to this world. It wasn't just a random dungeon in the middle of a city. The background and story for each dungeon made sense, like the Sheikah using the Shadow Temple, or the Zoras using the Water Temple as their holy place. They were perfect, especially considering this was one of the first 3D games Nintendo made.
Number 6. A Living World.
Okay, so like I said, I went to Twitter and Reddit to ask you, the Zelda fans, what you would change or just disliked about Zelda, and overwhelmingly, all of your issues could be fixed by one thing. So let's hear what you all had to say, and I apologize, but I just had too many replies to include all of them. So Luis Fernando says, more and better side quests. In short, put Majora's Mask inside Ocarina of Time. Camilla says, like in every game, I'd like to know more about the lore, have some things clarified, etc. Valeria says, I would like Hyrule Field to be bigger, and have more secrets in it, like the caves in Twilight Princess. Kern Still simply says, there's no dating system. Shy Guy XP had a bit more to say. I think Hyrule Field was pretty empty. The only parts of it that I can think of are the stone wall and fences near Lon Lon Ranch, as well as the patch of land hanging over the river near Kakariko Village. And as said by someone else, the future version looks no different. And finally, Bisforbenus, sorry if I mispronounced your name, had a lot to say, but here are just a few of his complaints. I'm going to start by saying I do like the game, but I do think it has its own share of faults. I think the overworld is generally not fun to move through. It's a lot of running through a large open space that has nothing in it. It's obvious that there's nothing here. I don't consider this a fun place to explore. The key points on the critical path of the game are interesting and fun to explore, but other places are not, and yet they set the game up clearly giving you lots of stuff to explore, but you'll see little other than more grass to find. Collectibles aren't fun to get. It's all about pieces of hearts, which isn't a fun reward. It moves you closer to getting more health that you really don't need because the game isn't terribly hard. You have a ton of opportunities to heal via drops, plus you can have lots of potions and fairies. Note, I'd say this is all stuff that's a common mistake across most Zelda games. They act like Zelda is a close and dear friend, but like you meet her and she gives you information. It's an endearing experience, just an exposition. She has no personality traits, and this weakens the big reveal that she is Sheik, which would be really cool if Zelda was developed better prior to this. Alright, so like I said, all of this can be fixed easily by one thing: side quests. The overworld in Ocarina of Time is completely empty. We have a few holes, trees, and enemies, but nothing at all is going on, aside from the Running Man, and when we're an adult, just forget it. It's completely lifeless. But what brings a game to life? Side quests. But to be fair, Ocarina of Time did have a few. We had the big Goron Sword quest, which would piss you off like nothing else, unless you had use of the magic plant. We had a fun little quest to get Blue Potion from the witch, and the mass quests were great. So what did all these quests have in common? They actually made you travel around Hyrule Field. You had a reason to be running around talking to people. I mean, one of those quests ended with you selling a mask for way too much money in Hyrule Field. So if we had more side quests like that, then maybe Hyrule Field could have been more populated with NPCs and characters. And the more NPCs we have, the higher chance of getting some of that backlore some of you, including myself, desperately want. Some of the quests for Zelda could even end with you being in a relationship with her or hinting towards one, much like Skyward Sword, which in turn would make those moments with Sheik and the big reveal that much more memorable. So I'm going to have to say the lack of side quests is the main problem here. Fixing that could have solved all of these problems. Majora's Mask was so great because of the side quests. The world felt alive because everyone had a story. Everyone had a purpose. You came to know these characters. You felt for them. You became happy when you made them happy. You were depressed when you couldn't. You knew the world was going to end in just a few days, and you barely have time to make it to the next dungeon, but you didn't care. You stayed and helped the people in Termina. Bringing those side quests to Ocarina of Time could have solved all of this.
Number 5. The Fishing Pond.
Truth be told, I thought about just putting mini-games here as an easy way out, but not all of them are actually that fun, and the one I would spend hours doing as a kid was fishing. I loved it. It even had secrets like the fishing lure, the Hylian Loach, and the bigger fish around the sunken log. If you were tired of solving puzzles or fighting enemies, you could just take a moment to relax and try beating your record. Plus, it wasn't completely pointless. You could win the scale, allowing you to dive deeper. You could steal the owner's hat, making him hatless for the rest of the game, and it allowed you to do one of the best glitches in the game, the Swordless Link glitch.
Number 4. Hyrule Castle Town.
I was going to joke around and mention the Running Man and how it used to irritate me that he would beat me by 1 second, but honestly, looking back on it, I find it more charming than anything else. So I want to bring up Hyrule Castle Town. This is for the same reason as my issues with Zoras Domain. Like I said in the beginning, you wake up from your 7-year sleep and the world is completely ruined. However, you can fix everything, almost. Just like Zoras Domain, Hyrule Castle Town simply can't be saved. It would have been nice if after beating Ganondorf it showed Hyrule Castle Town saved. Maybe in the Ura expansion it, along with Zoras Domain, could have been, but not here. Instead, the closest we get is everyone celebrating in Lon Lon Ranch. But I just wanted to return the castle town to its former glory and see what new experiences it had to offer. Even if it was just seeing it in an ending cutscene, but obviously being able to play it would have been great.
Number 3. The items.
I've played tons of adventure and RPG games. It seems every year we get more and more items, weapons, and who knows what else in them. I mean, in Skyrim, you can literally carry so many forks and cheese that you can't move. It's pointless. I mean, I love Skyrim, but come on, who really needs that much cheese? Even games similar to the Zelda series like God of War or Darksiders has items and weapons that are just boring or sometimes just seem out of place. That is where Ocarina of Time brings back perfection. Do you like your slingshot? Well, here's a bow and arrow that shoots fire, ice, and light. You know those beans that seemed like they had no purpose that you were buying for cheap before that kid figured out he could perfect his hustle game on you? Well, those useless beans end up being incredibly useful in each spot they are planted. That ocarina that you only used a few times ends up being not just a cool fashion accessory or a tool used to rock out with, but it's also your best way of traveling and brings some of the most memorable songs in a video game that you'll ever hear. And it's you, not the game, that's playing them. Even some of the skippable items end up being lifesavers, like Farore's Wind and Nehru's Love. It literally makes you invincible for a short period of time and is completely missable. Every item in Ocarina of Time has a purpose and is carefully thought out. The puzzles revolve around them perfectly and are even used at times just to get from one point to another. This next and final thing is actually the best and worst about Ocarina of Time. It ends. Alright, so I'm going to be completely serious and get a bit personal with this one. I'm not joking. I posted this on Twitter and the first response I got was from Mike Drucker, who actually used to work at Nintendo and is among other things responsible for naming Groose from Skyward Sword. Again, not joking. Check out my interview with him. Anyways, what I first looked at as just a funny response from a comedian held more weight than I thought. He was completely right. The worst thing about Ocarina of Time is that it ends. But that is what makes it so great. The fact that the worst thing about the game is that it ends means that the experience it gave you must have been beyond amazing. Once you beat the game, it's over. You will never get an experience like this again. This was the first 3D game I ever played. A Link to the Past was my first video game ever, but Ocarina of Time was the first time I fell in love with the game. The overworld, the characters, I knew everything about the game inside and out. The music, which I failed to mention on this list, is some of my favorite music out of any video game. I even listen to them in the car or while I'm skating. The characters in this game are so memorable that if I was to be able to choose the next Zelda game, it would be of Link after Majora's Mask returning to Hyrule and seeing how the world has changed. What is the Cuckoo Lady up to 7 years later in a world where Ganondorf never took over Hyrule? What will the Music Box Man be up to since he isn't pissed off that a kid broke his windmill? Did Mario's twin ever find his ex-wife or fall back in love? Did Link ever actually marry Milan, as my theory with Yuri of Wind suggests? Ocarina of Time is possibly the closest to perfection we will ever get in a video game, and nothing has compared to the experience I had when first playing it. As of right now, I have actually been recording and live streaming my little brother's first time playing through the game, just because I want to capture someone's first time playing such a perfect game, being able to hold on to that first experience. Now, looking at the future, Breath of the Wild will probably be the last chance Nintendo has at creating a truly unique experience like this. Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, Majora's Mask, they're all great games, but are all familiar to Ocarina of Time, where Breath of the Wild actually feels different. Going further into facts though, there is a reason this was rated as the #1 game of all time for so long. There's a reason almost every major game developer has at one point said they pull inspiration from Ocarina of Time. And this was Nintendo's first try. They got it perfect. Nothing came before this to show them what to do or base their ideals off of. When it started development, nothing else like it existed, and they perfected it the first time. Not just with a video game, but the experience they gave you. Almost every Zelda game since has referenced the events of Ocarina of Time in some way, whether it's Twilight Princess Link being the hero of Time's grandson, or the Wind Waker Link being raised to the story of the hero of Time and coming face to face with his statue. Ocarina of Time didn't just change the Zelda series forever, it changed the video game industry forever. And if you were playing it when it was still considered new, it probably even changed you, or at least the way you look at games forever. That is why, when the end cutscene passes, the credits finish, Zelda's lullaby stops, and we're froze on a screen of Link and Zelda meeting for the first time. We just smile and continue looking at the screen. Thank you for watching this video. I apologize for getting a bit too personal there. I plan on making this a series and my way of reviewing games in the future. With this being my first, I wanted it to be something that was important to me and others as well. Future videos will be shorter, and I'll try to have as many guests as possible like I have in the past with Yuri of Wind, HMK, McIntyre Productions, Greg Miller, if I can get him on again, RMFH, 2 Button Crew, and the rest of the Chamber of Sages that I frequently collaborate with. I will alternate between new and older games, so expect the new games like the next Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, Red Dead, the next Mario game, and older titles like Twilight Princess, Mario 64, Perfect Dark, and Mario Sunshine. I'll also be taking requests from you guys on what videos I should do in the future, and I'll continue to use fan comments in the videos as well. So please subscribe and continue to share your thoughts, and once again, thank you all for watching. It really does mean a lot that at this point in time, over 13,000 of you that are subscribed care enough to listen to my thoughts on the things that I'm passionate about. So thank you all for allowing me to do this. I want to thank you all for watching this video. If you liked it, give this video a like and share it with your friends. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future gaming news, theories, rumors, and discussions. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on how it could be improved. Your feedback is the most important part of bringing the quality of content on this channel to be the best that it can be. I would like to take this time to give a huge thank you to this month's Patreon supporters: Jonathan, The Edge Network, Magic Tech Review, John Frank, and Harris Priest. This video was made possible by supporters on Patreon. If you would also like to support this channel, head over to patreon.com/GameOverJesse where you can support this channel as well. Rewards vary from having your topic featured on a future discussion, seeing videos early, joining as a guest on a video, shoutouts, and having a custom avatar similar to my own drawn of you to match any video game or anime art style that you would like. Mine is of myself as Link, but you could choose to have yours any way that you would like. Finally, I would like to thank my friends CS Guitar 89 and Gnomo Designs for providing the music and artwork for this video.